Hello, everyone. Good morning, good evening. Welcome back. Welcome to Cloud and DevOps Batch 58. So, before I start the session, I just want to give a quick recap on what's being covered in the previous session. Previous session, we discussed about why do we need Kubernetes? Why can't we run just on the top of containers? What is the advantage of running container on the top of a pod? What are the challenges that are sorted by Kubernetes is also something we have discussed. Shared network and shared storage is the major complexity involved in the space of containers, which has been simply solved by Kubernetes, okay, with the help of compute pod. And also we discussed about the high level architecture of the Kubernetes architecture. And I also discussed about what is a control plane, what is a data plane, what is a master node, what is a worker node, and what is a kubelet, what is the etc database, what is a controller manager, what is a scheduler, what is a kube API server, and on which port we can hit, and what is the only component that is exposed to the others is also something we have discussed. And I also discussed kube control is a component that we have going to install it on your server to connect to the Kubernetes cluster, and each and every node kubelet is going to run. And if it is a managed cluster like your EKS, Elastic Kubernetes Service, or Google Kubernetes Engine, you really don't need to have any sort of a kubelet running or managing this unless until you are responsible for managing your own cluster. But 99% of the time, you don't see anyone managing your own Kubernetes cluster unless until it is on-prem. If it is on-prem, you end up seeing either Rancher or VMware Tangua, or it's an OpenShift. If it is on cloud, and if you are on cloud, and if you are using AWS cloud, you see using EKS. In 2 to 3 days, we'll start using EKS as well. If you are on Google Cloud, you'll be using Google Kubernetes Engine. In Google Cloud, GK is a flagship service. Okay, so let's get started. And also, from last 2 to 3 days, we are running a Kubernetes cluster on the top of a Minikube cluster, right? Now, this is how it is working. Okay, you need to understand one point, very important point. Minikube is just a easy to solve. Minikube is just a sandbox environment. Okay, so in our case, this is our one, right? So how it is working? First, container runtime is getting installed. Okay, now the container runtime. Okay, and you are going to, on the top of the container runtime, you are running a container called as a Minikube. Okay, Minikube container, just for your information. Okay, the Kubernetes environment that is being simulated for you is running as a container. All right, it's very, very, very important. You need to understand. So sometimes you don't see all the features. Okay, so I can show you just before the session I have started the server. I created the server and then ran the init script. Okay, now you can see Docker PS. You will be seeing one cluster, one container. And if you see the container, and the container is coming from gcr.io, which is a repository on Google Cloud, K8's Minikube, because Minikube is a product from, I mean, it's a public product. Okay, so that's the reason you are seeing this Kubernetes cluster running as a container. Typically, typically Kubernetes cluster runs container, but Minikube is being created as a container. Okay, so don't get confused on it. All right, and again, a couple of interesting points I wanna run through. Okay, learn Kubernetes. Right? Let me just open that. Okay, let's not get confused. Go over. Yeah. So if you want to see the list of resources, how do you do that? Okay, let me tell you how to list the supported resources in Kubernetes. Okay, so the command is Okay, this shows you the list of API versions that is supported, and resources that is going to supported, and if how to list the supported API versions in Kubernetes. Okay, so kube control API versions. Okay, now how to see the cluster info. All right, now you come here, kube control cluster hyphen info. You can see control plane is running. What is core DNS? We'll talk about it. Okay, an internal DNS server is also running on the top of Kubernetes server, which is going to serve a very important purpose. What is the purpose? We'll see that later. And you can also see kube control API versions. It is showing you what all versions of Kubernetes is it going to support, not versions of Kubernetes, what API versions are it's going to support in the administration registration V1. Okay, in the batch V1. Okay, right now they have made it as V1. So this is the API. Okay, and V1 is a V1 is a API version. Again in V1, first when they develop something, they keep it as V1 alpha and then beta. And then again, if beta also, if you want to add some test some features, say they say beta 1, beta 2. And if they achieve the stability, they'll just cut this and they'll just say, okay, V1. Okay. And for example, later if they want to add some features inside it, and if you want to get that without disturbing the old one, they'll release a new version V2. Okay. In our case, pods, which is the smallest resource in Kubernetes, is available on the top of V1. Okay. So we'll target very, okay. Any questions, anyone so far? And again, in case if you just shut down the machine and start again, every day I'm creating the brand new instance and running it. In case if you shut down the instance and start the instance, how to start Minikube? Okay, if you shut down the machine and start the machine, and Minikube won't be coming up automatically. So in that case, you just need to say Minikube force. Okay, a couple of people face this issue, so I just want to talk about it. Any questions, anyone so far? Want to take a pause to take up any questions if anyone has? Okay, all right, let's get started. So guys, one pod can run more than one container. Okay, because if you look at this containers, it's a list. Okay, now what I would like to do is I'll just try to clone it. So what I want to do is let me try to clone it. Okay, I'll create an alias. KC is equal to kube control. Every time me typing kube control is a type painful job. So kube control apply hyphen f. I also told you the difference between, okay, apply versus create. You don't see anyone using create because create only can create, apply can create and update the changes. Okay, now case you get pods. Okay, you can see the uh, status and the current status is containering. Starting, we saw the status as image not found, image error, and container creating and running status. You can see the status is running. And if you want to see the logs of this pod, kube control logs hyphen f, which is going to show you the logs of this container. Okay. Now another important thing, you can also have more than one pod running in a container. Okay. And that is called the multi container pod. So let me try to show you that 002 multi container pod. Okay. multi Okay, so first container that I would like to have is this, and second container I would like to run is MongoDB, for example. Okay. All right. Now I don't want to mention any port. I just want to check what is the what is the image name of MongoDB or Mongo. I think yeah, it's Mongo, not MongoDB. So yeah. Now let's see. Now try to pull and we did it. Again, I'll create an alias for git pull as well because I will be using a lot. Right. Come here and you see multi-container pod is created. Now see, now you can see earlier the status was 1 of 1 because the pod contains only one container. Now it's talking about 0/2 because it is the second two containers are there. And the status is both the creators are containing and the number of restarts is 2. Let's talk about it. And you see the other pod crash loop back off. We saw 4 status so far. One status is running, another status is container creating, another status was pending, and another status was crash loop back off. One of two. The other container was crashing. And if you see, it has been restarted once in last 3 seconds, 3 seconds back. And if you want to see what is the reason now, it restarted for a couple of times and then it went to the error. What is the reason for that case? Logs -f. What is the reason for it? Now you can see, okay. Now you can see Docker entry point looking for the script, all right, because there is nothing to do for it, and that's the reason it is failing. Okay, so you need to find the appropriate container. You need to find appropriate container. So let's find any appropriate container. Multi-container pod in Kubernetes. Let's find some image. Okay, Debian container. Again, guys, the name of the container is Debian, and it is going to run an image called as Debian. And the command that it has to run is this. Okay, and if you want to tell what command it has to run, I'll be mentioning this. And if I don't mention this, what will happen is the container will start. Okay, the container will start since it is an operating system. See, Nginx is a process, so you don't have to tell what it is. But Debian is an operating system, so you need to tell to run some process. I'm just going to tell to run some process. Okay, so this is how you define. All right. Now I'll come here. Now I don't want this pod, by the way. So first I would like to delete it. kc delete -f002. So whatever we have mentioned in this particular pod will be gone. Okay. So you cannot update all the properties and then make an apply because it is a bare minimum pod. All right. There are some properties that you can update when the pod is in the running state itself. What is those pods and all these things we'll talk about it later. But for now, let's see the mechanics of it. Okay. So do a git pull, apply. Get pods. Now you can see container status in the running. And if you want to see the status live, where the status has to refresh for every 3 seconds, you can use something called as -v. W stands for stat. So here it again goes back to the crash loop back off. And I want to know the reason. What is the reason for that? Okay. Now you can mention, okay, I want to sleep or anything. Okay. But I know the reason because it has to run for a certain amount of time. Maybe you can also say sleep 60. No, this is going to run the pod. It's going to run a process for 60 seconds and then the container dies because you're telling the operating system to run sleep 60, which runs and then it dies. Okay, let me do it. By the way, any questions, anyone? Any questions? Questions? Any other questions, guys? Okay, let's get started. Okay, now see the pods. Okay, now you can see the pod is running in the state, or hyphen W is a shortcut, or you can also use hyphen hyphen watch. Now you see, so after 60 seconds, okay, it went for a restart. Okay, that's what it is. And how many times it has to restart again is a policy that you're going to mention. Okay, there is a policy called image pullback off that is going to define how many times when a process is been in the phase of running, and if it fails or if it is being completed, how many times it has to restart. By default, it is 3 or 4, but if you want to control that, you can. Okay, that is one thing. This is how you supply a command. Okay, all right, perfect. Now, you know what? If a pod is running, okay, for example, if you are not aware of all these things, okay, but you know how to create a pod imperatively, keep control, create pod, and the name of the pod is nginx hyphen pvod, okay, pvodd hyphen hyphen image is equal to nginx. And if you run this, it is going to create the pod. Keep control, create pod. Uh, Keep control, create 1 second. It's not create run, sorry. So cube control run nginx. Okay, and if you come here and if you say dry run, this is just going to show you, okay, whether this command is valid or not. Okay, not here. Hyphen o. Let keep control get run hyphen hyphen nginx. Okay, now it's going to create a pod, right? KC get pods. Now, if you want to see what is the manifest associated with this, okay, you can come here, keep control, get pod hyphen o YAML. And if you do this, you're asking, oh, give me the YAML output. Okay, you can also get the YAML output as well. And these are all, it is a, okay, you can ask me, hey, I haven't mentioned any of these things. How rest of the properties came up? They are the defaults. Okay, and how to see the manifest of a, okay, how to see the manifest of a deployed Kubernetes resource. Okay, not just for pod, anything. Down the line, we'll see 20 to 30 types of resources. Okay, kube control, get. Now this gives you the manifest. Now, whenever you are deploying any sort of pod, and if you want to see whether this manifest is correct or not, what you can do is you can have multiple containers. I mean, you can have multiple resources written in a single file as well. Again, this is just a separator. This is not a Kubernetes thing. It is a YAML thing. Okay, if you want to write multiple resources in a single manifest file, you can do that. You can separate them by using 3 hyphens. Okay, sample hyphen pod. I want to see whether this is this configuration that I'm making is correct or not. Okay, so all I can do is I can come here, I can say git pull, apply, okay, hyphen dry, dry run. Okay, now it tells you, and 1 second. Uh, Cube control, apply, and dry run. So what this does is cube control apply hyphen F, hyphen dry run must be none server or client. If client strategy, only the print object would be sent without send. If the server name usage, how to use. I think hyphen dry run is deprecated. Okay, I am facing a weird behavior when doing a dry run. Cube control apply hyphen F hyphen I YAML hyphen dry run options meet. Okay. Okay, according to the documentation, hyphen dry run is equal to false. If true, only print the object without sending it. Okay. So yeah, earlier just a dry run, which is true by default. Now they made it different. Which is true. Yeah, hyphen dry run. No, it's not really going to. Can you see this? Already up to the date. Pods. You see. Nginx hyphen pod sample pod. Can you see this pod sample pod created, but server dry run? Okay, that means you have mentioned it, but it has not created. Okay, let's try to see this. What will happen? Dry hyphen dry run is equal to true. Okay, and it says hyphen dry run is equal to true or hyphen false is deprecated Boolean values and can be replaced with hyphen client. That means you can tell dry run has to be done either by your kube control command locally, which is nothing but your kubelet, or it can be done by the server as well. Okay, so if you want to add one more pod as well, you can do that. Okay, HTTP pod. Okay, you can see whether the configuration is ready or not. I mean, valid or not. Come here and make a git pull and see. Now the request is being sent to the Kubernetes cluster and validated whether it is true or not. Okay, this is just to make sure whether the configuration is valid or not. Okay, this is another thing. Okay, before you apply it, because your Kubernetes manifest will have 10 resources. And you want to make sure before you apply to the server Kubernetes, you want to make sure whether the configuration is true or not. Okay, that's when dry will come up. Okay, how to validate manifest file without deploying to cluster. Interesting, right? So this tells whether resource is valid and can be deployed or not without really deploying. Okay. Let's also ask a difference between or a dry run, client versus server versus none. What is this? So earlier it's just a dry run, okay, which is true by default. Hyphen client, okay, which means YAML is used to get the YAML output of the dry run command. This is useful to see what command will actually do when running it. Yes, I know. The object is not validated by the API server. Okay, got it. As I mentioned, this will just be validated by your kubelet to see whether this configuration is true or not. But this object is not validated by the server, which is nothing but your API server. And this output can be seen like this. Okay, so uh, this output can be seen like this by giving -o YAML. But if you mention it as a dry run, then it is going to go and get it validated from the API server itself. Okay, that's the difference. So, or this will only be validated by the client, not by the API server. This is just when you're developing something, if you want to give it a dry run, this is helpful. This is helpful. Okay. Any questions, anyone? All right. Next concept I want to talk about namespace. What is namespace? Okay. This is a very nice concept. What is namespace in Kubernetes? Let's talk about it. So typically, in organizations, Kubernetes clusters will be very big, very, very big. Okay. So if you are working for a SaaS-based company where they offer software as a service for different customers, or you are having a very big cluster, let's assume this is your Kubernetes cluster. Okay. Okay, let's assume this is a Kubernetes cluster. In this Kubernetes cluster, you can have a number of nodes, right? So for example, this Kubernetes cluster is used by 5 different teams like payment team, cart team, catalog team, and FinOps team. Okay. So again, in Kubernetes, you cannot use uppercase letters or camel case letters. This is one very important point. You cannot use uppercase letters in Kubernetes. Okay, keep that point in mind. Now, this cluster is being used by 4 different teams. Okay. Now, I can directly go and deploy all the resources wherever I want. Okay, for example, you can create all the resources wherever you want in the cluster. But what if I want to make sure I want all the payment resources should be running independently without interfering to cart resources, and cart resources or the resources that belong to the team of cart should be running in a different namespace or a different unit. So in this case, okay, if you feel that okay, I have different teams, I want to run things in different environments, you are highly welcome to create multiple clusters. But end of the day, cost is going to increase, right? So if you fall into a situation where multiple teams are leveraging your Kubernetes cluster, you see in a very interesting concept called a namespace, where in the Kubernetes cluster itself, you see multiple namespaces comes up. You're going to create multiple namespaces. Like you can name it as, okay. And you can call this as FinOps namespace. You can have a FinOps namespace. So what is the advantage of it? In this way, okay, you can run all the resources belong to this guy. Okay, let's say, all right, just using different colors. All these are pods only again. Okay, okay. So what you can do is through this way, you can isolate, okay, what teams are doing here and here. Again, resources, pods that are running here, whether they can talk to the other resources that are available in the namespace or not in the separate thing, but you can isolate the thing. So you can say all the team belonging to the payment team can only be given access to the namespace, this particular namespace, so that they can create, destroy, update the resources only in that particular namespace. Though they have access to the cluster, you can control, they cannot access cart, catalog, and FinOps. This way, multiple teams can work on the same cluster without interfering on the other workloads. This way, you can efficiently work on without costing more. Okay. Along with this, I was talking about this namespace, what is it, Cube API server, and all these things. Where are these running, by the way? We discussed about this. Where are these running? Where are these running? So by default, Kubernetes has a namespace as kube control. Get in is a command to see the list of namespaces that are running. So default is the namespace by default where your workloads are running. And a kube system and a kube public, these two are the names workloads. These two are the namespaces where the system workloads are going to run. Again, this kube node lease, all these things will vary from cloud provider to cloud provider. Okay, and if you want to see what are the resources that are available in this, kube control get all is a command to show you the list of all the resources, and you don't have to mention namespace name. Okay, by default it is going to search in the default namespace, and that's the reason when you say kube control get all, whatever the resources that are available is going to show up here. Okay, because by default the search is going to happen in the default namespace, but if you want to see what is happening inside this, okay, you can use -n and mention this. I was talking about it, right? XCD database, Cube API server, controller manager, Cube proxy, scheduler. All these things are available in the system namespace. Okay. And what is available in this Cube public? Let's talk about it. And you can see nothing is there. Okay, there are some resources. When you deploy, they would be coming up, but all the resources that belong to the system are available in the Cube system. Okay, let's ask an internet. Default, what are the namespaces that comes up in Kubernetes by default? Let's ask. Okay, so here you can see kube public, kube system, and default. So kube public, use it for all these resources that we discussed. Kube system, use it for Kubernetes components such as just kube DNS and kube proxy. Okay, so let's talk about it. Let's try to add. Again, as I mentioned, depending on the version of the Kubernetes, you might also see kube node lease. This namespace is holds the lease objects associated with the node. Again, let's not get into that. Okay, first let's talk about what is a namespace in Kubernetes. Okay, let's talk about it. Using this, we can isolate the resources belongs to different team, and this is to make sure one team cannot access other resources. Okay, we can also ensure that one namespace can use only X CPU and Y memory and can define these limits. Okay, Uh, so again, Kubernetes by default comes with 3 namespaces. By default, it is default namespace. That is not going to have a name specified namespace. You don't have to mention it. Whether you run any command, everything comes up there. Kube system. So use it for Kubernetes components like kube proxy, kube API server, controller managers, and scheduler and kube okay are available inside this kube system. Okay, kube public, use it for public resources, and this namespace is readable by all the users, including the people who are not authenticated. Again, the statement is not right. Stick to this. Okay, all right. This is what it is. So how to see the resources of a specific namespace? Okay, kube control, get all -n namespace name. I'm just using this camel case. This is called as a camel case, guys. Okay, so this is general English, this sun, right? A camel case is first you without using space identify multiple words of a sentence by beginning it with uppercase letter rather apart from the first word. Okay, so example, the cloud carriers. Okay, this is called as camel case. All right, and you also have something called a snake case. This is snake case. All right. So I can see an example, kube control get all. Okay, this is how you can see it. All right. Now, how to create a namespace? Okay, and if you don't find how to create a namespace, okay, kube control create namespace, and if you don't know about anything, kube control create namespace. Let's say expense expense app -o YAML. Okay, this is going to create a namespace. Okay, again, if you just say kube control create namespace -o YAML, it creates a namespace and show you the output, but I don't want to create it through commands. Okay, I want to see how whether this command is true or not, and then I'll try to get the YAML out of it. Okay, So namespace is created, but this is a server dry run. And if you go here and try to see, there are still 4 namespaces only. Now what I'm going to do is I'll -o YAML. It gives me the manifest of it. I can simply take it. ABA version, namespace, metadata, name. Yeah. So if you want to correct without having any other attributes, okay, just like how Kubernetes API servers is, you can use this. Okay, come here. One namespace, expense app, done. Okay, this is how you can, without even seeing the documentation, if you want some resources, you can get it. Okay, now I want to create a namespace. I'd like to create a pod in the front end namespace. Okay, now I can say front end, and I would like to create it in expense app namespace. That's it. Okay, this is one way. Or while creating itself, you can mention kube control apply -f -n. That is also fine. Anything is fine. Okay. Can you see this? Namespace expense app is created. Pod front end app is also created. Now, if you come here and if you try to see kube control get all, you don't see the you don't see the pod front end pod. Can anyone tell me why I'm not able to see the front end pod? Anyone? Anyone? Anyone interested to answer? Anyone? Anyone? Shrideep, Srilata, Ambed, Girisha, Mahendra, Rachit, Sagar, Shailaja, Shumit. Anyone? Why I'm not able to see it?
Because you created a namespace, not pod.
Okay, I created a namespace. What's next? Why I'm not able to see the created pod? Anyone? Anyone? I'll be really happy if you answer. Anyone? I'll take a pause without you answer. I'm not gonna go.
Is it because that pod is present inside that namespace?
Sorry?
Uh, that pod is present inside the namespace.
Which namespace?
Expense app.
Okay. Now why it is not showing up here? We discussed this point. By default, if you don't mention the namespace, where the search will happen?
In
See,
default namespace.
exactly. See, assume this is your Kubernetes cluster, and inside this Kubernetes cluster, your etcd database. Okay. etcd is a database for the Kubernetes cluster, right? Now, all the data that is related to default namespace will be in this particular block. All the information that is related to expense name app will be decided here. All the information that is related to blah blah will be decided here. That means when you make a command, by default, your QAPA server goes and makes the query in the default namespace of the etcd cluster. Okay, that's the reason it shows you the information that it know. But if you create a resource inside this, you explicitly need to mention, okay, the search has to happen inside this expense namespace. Does it make sense? Clear? You are almost correct. So -n expense -app. Now you will be seeing it. Okay, clear? Clear, guys? Anyone has any questions on this?
Manoj, what is the purpose of these namespaces?
Sorry, come again.
What
Hello,
is the purpose of this namespaces? Am I audible?
you are audible. We discussed this, right?
Oh,
What did we discuss? Let's assume you are having a big cluster and that cluster is being used by payment team, card team, catalog team, and FinOps team. I want to make sure teams belonging, resources belonging to payment should not be isolated with people who are deploying card related resources. So either you can create multiple clusters to host the resources, but it is a costly thing, but all of them belonging to the same project, but they are operated by different teams. The easiest way to handle is create multiple namespaces and delegate access to each and every team on that particular namespace so that payment team can deploy the resources in the payment namespace and they cannot interfere with cart and catalog resources. Agree? Does it make sense? Advantages of namespace?
yes.
Clear?
Yeah.
All right. Okay.
And
Now,
Manoj, one more question. So in
mhm,
namespace, how Kubernetes are allocating the resources?
mhm. By default, it is not allocating the resources. If you want to define that, you can do it. Okay. By default, you're isolating the resources. That's it. If you want to mention, okay, I want only these resources, this much amount of resources to be allocated to this. Let's say you're having 100 CPU and 100 memory. You want to make sure 50% of the resources should be allocated to the FinOps team because they are doing some financial transactions. And this guy should get 10% of the resources, and this guy should get only 20% of the resources, and this guy should get 20% of the resources. You can define it. Okay. For example, in the same Kubernetes cluster, assume you are creating 3 environments. Okay. You can also say it as, okay, prod, not prod, staging environment. And next is the QA environment. And next is development environment. Okay. Now, if you assume this, I want to make sure at any point of time, stage should be given higher number of resources. And I don't care whether the resources are given to development or not. So this way you can control how much resources can be given or not. There is a concept called as quota. Quotas work well through namespaces. Okay. But by default, the fundamental concept of namespace is to isolate the resources. That's it. Okay. You simply see that. Okay. So why a Cube API server and all these things you cannot see? Because the reason why that it is, they want to make sure you don't interfere with the system resources. All right. Clear. Sumit, Vikram, are we clear? Shall we proceed next?
Yes, Manoj.
All right. And if you don't care about which namespace it is, I want to make sure the search should happen across all the namespaces. You can use -a. Okay. When you do this, it's going to show you all the resources that are available in all the namespaces as well. Okay, this is one thing. Right. And since we are talking about this, there are again two types of resources in Kubernetes. Kubernetes resources can either be namespaced or cluster or cluster. Okay, what does this mean? Okay, pods are namespaced. That means the scope is scope. Okay, so for example, if you take about nodes are cluster resources. Okay, so there are certain resources, these pods, the scope of the pod is within the namespace. That means looking into this, if you make a query, you can only see the resources of this particular resources in that particular namespace. Okay, so what exactly do I mean? Let me show you that. Kube control API resources. If you run this command, it tells you bindings. We don't know what is bindings and all these things, but at this point of time, it is true. Okay, if you come here and if you try to look at the pods, PODS pods, okay, and pods can also be called by using PO. If you remember day one, a couple of days back, I was using kube control get pods. Instead of pods, I was just using kube control get PO. And this is available in the version 1 of the API and the namespace, whether it is true or not. Yes, it's true. Okay, and again, Kubernetes nodes are not namespaced. And namespace, whether namespace is namespace? No, namespace is at cluster level. The resources inside the namespace are namespace. All right, clear. That is one thing I want to talk. All right, so how do we know whether a resource scope cluster or namespace? Again, I'm going quite detailed because in interviews, people ask more in Kubernetes. So you need to bear with me. I'll spend more time. Okay. This is how you can see whether it is a namespace or not. Okay. All right. Clear? Next. Next is sets. Okay. Keep in mind. Okay. I told you one very important point while dealing the Kubernetes, while dealing the Docker. What is the main advantage of Docker? What is the main advantage of Kubernetes? What will happen if you lose any of the server? What happens to all the containers that are running inside it? I told you, if you delete a cluster, all the resources that are available inside it will move to the another node, right? If you delete any container, I already mentioned, if you delete any container, I need a mechanism that should be created in another resource, another node. I told you, right? And this all can be done by Kubernetes. Agree? How many of you remember it? Anyone remember this statement? Shailaja? Srideep? In Docker, if you delete any container, you lose the container. But I want a mechanism. I want to make sure even if you delete the container, it should create one more automatically. Okay, because overnight, if some container is deleted, a payment deleted, you won't get a page and logging into the cluster and then creating one more. That's not how it works, right? So Kubernetes, okay, we don't create pods in Kubernetes. How many of you are not? How many of you are confused with this statement? How many of you are confused with this statement? Let me explain it. Okay, I'll tell you why we don't create pods. Okay, KC get pods, right? Okay. I'll come here and I'll delete this pod. What the hell? Manoj, you said that in Kubernetes, if you delete the pod or if Kubernetes cluster itself deletes the pod, automatically Kubernetes is going to create one more pod, right? Why it is not creating? How many of you are questioning me this? Anyone? That's the reason. Okay, we don't create pods. Okay, we don't create pods asking, hey, create a pod. No, we don't do that. Okay, so we use sets. And what is a set? Okay, so there are 4 types of sets. And these sets will create the resources, pods, and Kubernetes. Okay, because of the advantages to maintain the replica count. Okay, so what are these pods? What are the deployment? What are these sets? Replica set, deployment set, daemon set, next is stateful set. Okay, so this is a very, very nice feature. Let's talk about it. Okay. Okay. This will ensure the mentioned number of pods are running all the time. Even again, all of them are controllers, by the way. We discussed about controllers, right? Controller manager. And these are all the components of the controller. This is also a container. This is also a container. This is also a controller. So even if we or system deletes the pod accidentally, immediately the mentioned number of pods will automatically be created. We'll double click into this in some time today. Okay, but let me speak more about it. Okay, first let me try to show you how that works. Okay, then we'll double click into it. All right. So first, create a replica set. Any questions so far? Taking a pause.
So, uh,
Hello.
yes, hi Manoj. If
Yeah,
I say in real environment resource hierarchy, so first on top is cluster, then namespaces, then inside namespaces pod, and inside the pod containers, we can
that's it.
say.
That's it. You're right.
O- Okay, okay.
Again, please don't use the word real time. Okay, there is no such thing. Whatever,
Okay, sir.
everything is open source, right?
Yes, yes. And below containers, we can say the
That's it.
instance.
Don't go beyond that. Don't go beyond that.
Okay,
Cluster, pod, within the pod container. That's it. Don't go underneath what is happening. Okay, my request.
okay, okay,
Because that's really, again, we are not interested in the engineering of Kubernetes. We are interested of engineering the application. Okay,
okay, okay.
perfect. Any questions? Any Any questions on this? Any question?
One question, Manoj. So one namespace will run by multiple instances, VM instances, we
That
can
doesn't
say.
matter. That doesn't matter. See, when you're talking about a cluster, you never see them as a unit, by the way. Okay? You have to be very careful on it. See, the main idea behind the cluster is I want to make sure I run it as a unit. But again, if you're talking about, okay, where the pod, no, it's no cluster, assume they are like building blocks, assume they are like bricks. Okay, we use bricks to construct a wall. It's very simple. We have bricks, assume bricks like nodes. Okay, and you put the bricks and you put the mortar and you form a wall. It's a single unit. Clear? Once the wall is constructed, we don't care about the walls. We don't care about the bricks. Make sense?
Okay, got it.
Your question is, I want to know where and all my namespace is running. No, there is no such thing. Okay, namespace is a logical entity. Okay, there is no such thing. This is your question. I want to know. Again, this is not a compounded approach, right? To say what is the length and breadth. Agree?
Yes.
There is no such thing. Okay. So whatever the resources that you deploy, they will be stick to the. Okay. Again, this is just for your understanding, by the way. Everything will be deployed everywhere. Where the etcd database is going to organize the data is what matters. Inside the etcd database, they are creating a layer called as your namespace with the name n, and all the data of it will be residing under that.
It will
Okay,
bind logically to resources.
exactly. For human understanding, they call it as it. But in the backend, again, it is just a database query running on a different entity. That's it.
Okay.
Make sense?
Yes, got it.
If you remember the diagram that I have drawn, just 15 minutes before the session when I introduced the namespace, you should understand it.
Okay.
Okay. And there is no such box that is going to create on the namespace. No, that is for your illustration. Everything is about, okay, this is the etcd database. As simple as that. Don't think too much. Clear?
Yes, clear.
The reason why I'm not going deep is because we are not interested about the engineering of Kubernetes.
Yes.
Because this is already invented, right? There is no need to reinvent.
Yes, we have to administration of this.
Not administration. You work like a developer. That's it. You don't work like an engineer on this. Because it's a tool, right?
Yes.
Perfect. The reason why I'm setting the expectation is because if you start looking into an engineering aspect, you'll get a lot of questions. All of them will be addressed, but you will not get anything out of that. That's the main idea. Okay.
We will be diverted from our aim or track.
It's
What
very
is
simple. You want to become a racer, bike racer. You don't care about, okay, what is the engine oil, how this been assembled. You're not interested about the engineering about it. You're interested in driving the bike. Okay, that's it. There is a whole set of team which takes care of your race. You have to be a good racer, right? Okay, perfect. Let's go ahead and create a replica set. Okay, now I'm talking about replica set. If you create a deployment, if you create a pod by using a set, the set ensures the promised number of pods are going to run all the time. If you mention I want 3 instances of front-end pods, your set is going to make sure 3 pods of front-end are running all the time. In case even if someone deletes it, immediately one more will be created. Let me show you that. And we'll go into the engineering of it, how it's gonna work in few minutes, but let's try to see. Replica set in Kubernetes. Okay, so here is what it is: a replica set with fields including selector. Okay, all these things we'll talk about it. When to use a replica set? A replica set ensures the specific number of pods running at any given time. Okay, so this actually means that you have to. Okay, let's not discuss about it, but that's the main idea. Replica set, and the name of the replica set is this. And again, what is this app as guestbook, tire as front end? We'll see that. But for now, first we'll deploy, and how that works is the second thing. We'll go with Nginx only. Let's use a version. We'll select some version intentionally. Pearl and hotel, right? Okay, so you're running Nginx image whose version is Pearl. All right, publish the code. Now, right now, if you want to see the list of replica sets that are running, keep control, get replica set. This is one command, or you can also use a shortcut, keep control, get rs. Okay, there are no deployment, there are no in this particular namespace. Now, what I'm going to do is I'll just make a git pull, kc apply. Replica set. Now you can see replica set front end got created. Now come here, keep control get rs. You see a front end replica set is created and it desired current ready. Desired means I told it to run 3 number of pods at any time. Okay, the replicas is a field that tells how many number of pods should be created with this specification. Keep this point in mind. Replicas is going to ensure how many number of pods are going to be created with this container spec. Okay, that is nothing but the desired. And out of the desired, how many are running right now? Okay, it can be 2 or 1 or 3. But the thing is, desired and current should be same all the time. That's the responsibility of the container. Okay, and all 3 are running. It doesn't mean they are ready. Ready means they are ready to accept the load. Okay, now Manoj, where are the pods? Keep control get pods. Can you see this? So pods that are created by the set will have a suffix with this 5 or 4 junk characters. All right, and this is the replica set, and this set has created the pods, and all the pods are running. Now all I do is I'll create delete a pod. Keep control delete pods. Can you see this? I deleted the pod, immediately they were created, and fraction of seconds, if you notice it. Can you see this, guys? Now I'll delete this pod. The pod is deleted. Now see, it's a fraction of seconds. So the reason why people are highly adopting Kubernetes, it's things happen on the fraction of seconds. You want to move from one version to another version, fraction of seconds. So for example, WhatsApp has released a version that helps you in making video call. Right now, you can have a maximum of 5 people in a group call. They released a feature where you can talk to 6 people at a time. Right after they released it, people are experiencing very bad experience. Immediately they'll roll it out. In the back end, again, all of them are pods. Okay, so your controller is going to assume. So whatever I said is true or not. Casey, delete the pod. Okay, Casey. I deleted the body immediately. The moment it deleted, immediately one more is creating. Who is taking care of it? Your replica set is taking care of it. Okay, the replica set front end is taking care of it. How this replica set got this feature? Again, it is a backbone of it is controller, which is available in the kube system namespace. Clear? Clear or not?
Yes,
Okay.
clear.
let's talk in detail about it. I'll ask you a few questions. You should answer me. Now, how, let's understand the engineering aspects of it, how it is working, by the way. Okay. You
Manoj,
are,
can you please go back to the replica.yml file? Actually, I missed something.
hold on,
I just want to
hold on, hold on,
look
hold on,
in.
hold on. Just give me 2 minutes, okay? Let me explain this
Yeah,
concept
sure,
first.
sure.
Because I just don't want to disturb the flow. Yeah. Okay. Here, if you look at this, you are creating the replica set. Okay, you are creating a replica set. And in the replica set, you have mentioned, I want 3 pods. Now, what this guy is doing, this guy is creating the pods. That's it. So, this is guy, this guy. How that is working, we'll see that. Okay. Now I want to increase the number of pods. There are 2 ways that you increase it. Okay. Now the easiest way is you can use the command cube control scale replica scale rs front end hyphen replicas is equal to 5. Okay, now you're asking, I want to scale the replica. I want to scale the replica set whose name is front end, and the replicas that I want is 5. Okay, now immediately I'll say cube control get pods to see. Can you see these 2 more containers are creating automatically? Now, you know what will happen? This is just temporary. If someone tries to come and apply this one more time, whatever is being mentioned in the YAML file is a source of truth. Can you see this? They were taken down immediately. So that's the reason if you are doing things through commands, cube control, scale replicas, all these commands manually, uh, if any automation runs the manifest one more time, obviously in here, things will be on the top of 3. So obviously it will be coming up. So whatever the changes you want to make, they should be done through code so that everything will be intact. All right. That's the idea. Done. Can you see this? You downloaded, applied the replica set, keep control get pods, and you can see this. And again, if you see this, already up to the just like your Ansible, if there are no changes, it's not going to do, right? So if you come here and if you try to do it, since there is no change, it's not going to choose. See, front end replica set unchanged, right? If you come here and if you try to make it to 6, some change is there. It's going to recognize it and it is going to, okay, and it's going to say, okay, file change, replica set has been configured. Earlier you say unchanged, it's configured and it is creating one more because the replica set says 6. All right. But if you come here and if you try to say whatever you want, for example, I'll just say something blah, blah, blah. Will this field will also be applied or not? Let's see. Can you see this? The front end is invalid. Spec template metadata labels is invalid value. It says selector does not match the template. Okay, so for example, we'll just change this name. Okay, as per it, it is a new pod then. No, it's not the right thing. Something. Let's see what will happen. Is it going to apply or not? Yes, it is applied. Okay. Also assume not all the fields can be updated. Okay. So for example, I want to see the properties of it. Okay. So first, let me try to show you that. Just a second. Just had a grab of water. Now here, now I want to describe it. Okay, so it's very easy. Keep control, describe RS front end. Now it is telling you the properties of it, right? And you can also see it is using front end Perl. And if you want to see what are the properties of the pod also, you can come here, KC, describe pod. Now it also tells you the same. The image that it is using is Perl. Okay. Now, if I want to update from one version to another version, which typically we do in a day-to-day basis. Now, for example, I want to go from Perl version to OTEL version, OTEL, Open Telemetry version. Okay, I'll come here and I'll try to see this. Let's see whether this will work or not. Now you can see your replica set got configured. Keep this point in mind. Your replica set got configured, but the pods were not changed. Why? Now come here and try to describe it and see what it says. It still says image that it is supposed to be used is this. What is that? Open telemetry pod. But if you go here and try to see this, it says it is still using Nginx Perl. That means the version update is not really happening with replica set. Now let's try to scale up the pods and see what it says happens. Okay, scale. I'll try to scale it up to 8 pods. Now what happens to the new pod? Let's try to see. KC, describe the pod. Now whether the new pods created with replica set will have open telemetry, which is the latest, or the old one, Perl. Can you see this? It created with open telemetry. That means when you update the image version as a part of the replica set, it is not going to affect the existing one, which is a very dangerous thing. Okay, this is a very important point. Okay. Using replica set, we cannot move from replica set will be configured, but it's not going to impact the pods. Okay, but the new pods that are going to be provisioned, okay, which is not a great way. It's okay. Replica set, we only use this. We only use replica set just to make sure the committed number of pods are running all the time or not. Okay. So if you want to move, if you want to support the deployment version update strategy, version updating to the pods, then we need to use another type of controller set called as deployment. Okay, clear? All right. So labels and selectors are very important, guys. Okay, labels. Let's talk about that tomorrow. Now I'll ask you one question. How your set, first the set is created, and the set is going to create these 3 parts, and these 3 parts are going to be reporting or will be managed by this set. How the parts that are running will come to know that it has to be reporting to the front end RS. How this bonding is happening between the pod versus set. Okay, that is tomorrow's topic.
So Manoj, can we say that replica set is kind of namespaces only?
No, It is just a wrapper which is holding it. That's it.
Why I'm asking this question, because I have seen somewhere in the CLI
Mhm.
pod's name means replica set name is coming before the pod name, similar to the namespaces case,
No, they are
right?
different. They're different. Assume set is a resource manager. Okay. Your pod is the actual compute resource. Your set is a resource manager. That's it. Okay. Namespace is a logical organizer of your cluster. Both are two different things. Make sense?
Okay. Hmm.
You're asking a question. You're asking me to move back to the manifest. I switch it back. Please ask your question. Sumit or Vikram, please ask your question. Since I was in the middle of the topic, I just refrained answering that. We can spend time. Sumit, is your question still open?
No, I'm clear now.
Okay. Basics will go slow. Okay, no rush. Any questions? Vikram, Sumit, Srilata, Srideep, Shailaja, Rachit, Mahendra, Grisha, Ambit. Is it interesting, by the way? It's altogether a different world. Any questions? Okay, I'll take it as no. That's for today, guys. Okay, we'll take it easy. We'll go step by step. Okay, no rush because it's a very important concept that we cannot skip. That's for today. I'll cancel the instance and then we'll see you tomorrow in the session. Thank you. Signing off.